That's fine. I'll still take him for the savings and the upside that we talked about. I still think he's got a better chance to win than most of these guys. Just touched on some other guys in that 8K range. I'm definitely fading Finau. I don't think it sets up very well for him this week. DeChambeau's a fade. I've heard some chatter about Woodland. The guy just makes too many big numbers for me. You could see him a couple under with a few holes left on Thursday, and then make 2 doubles coming in. Wouldn't shock anybody. I just like guys that are grinders, that make a lot of pars, that know how to play U.S. Open golf, and he does not strike me as that kind of guy.
What do you think of Xander this week?
Xander? It's hard to ignore him as a big game player. I mean, he's certainly coming in under the radar. He's shown that he can pop in these big events. Yeah, I mean, if I play Xander, I'll probably just fade Matsuyama and Scott in tournaments and just play like Xander, Casey, Phil instead of those higher owned guys like Kuchar, Scott, Matsuyama, and Fleetwood in tourneys. And, nobody would be shocked if Xander popped. He's another guy, too, where I'd say he's got a higher probability to win than anybody else in the 8K range. So, if you're looking to cash in a big tourney, he's definitely a good play. What's his ownership looking like?
12.
12, perfect. Sign me up for some X-Man.
All right. Chris, anything?
No, I don't have anything to add here.
Yeah, we're getting to your area. I see Kevin Na coming up on the board here at 7,700.
Then we got Jim Furyk in the 7K range too. So this is right in Chris's wheelhouse here.
Yeah, there we go.
Makes it easy to get those big guys.
So the 7K range is pretty huge here. So why don't we do the upper? Why don't we look at 7,500 to 7,900?
I like it. As we mentioned, I know Webb's going to be super high owned. I've heard a lot of talk about Kevin Na too, and I actually don't hate it. I think Na's got a good chance this week. I think it's of the major venues, it's one that sets up better for him than anywhere else. He's also a California guy, so he's very adept at putting on Polo greens. So I like Na at 7,700. I'm not in love with Reed, Garcia, Leishman. I'm kind of indifferent on. I haven't decided on him yet. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper tonight, but he's the first guy that pops for me in that 7,500 and up range. And I also like Matt Wallace a lot too. If it's a par fest and you gotta get out there and make some up and downs and grind it out. Matt Wallace is the guy that's shown he can do that. Played great in the PGA Championship under tougher conditions, similar to what we're going to see as far as relation to par. So definitely like him, and I know everyone's going to be on Sneds too. He's shown some form here recently. He finished top 5 last week. I know his ownership's going to be high, and he's won here before in the Pro-Am, so I know his ownership's going to be up there. I think Sneds, to me, is going to be a fade this week, at least in tourneys, and I'll play him in cash. U.S. Open is such a crapshoot where you're going to have a lot of guys that are highly owned that miss the cut. Like, that's an absolute guarantee. If you think there's a sure thing in the U.S. Open, you're mistaken, because it's the most volatile week of the entire season. So this week, above all else, I love going with guys that are good pivot plays that are just as likely to make the cut and contend. So because of that, I'm actually out on Sneds. I'm only taking probably those 2-3 guys we talked about in the 7K range, at least in the 75 and up.
So the highest owned player in the projected owner player in the tournament is Webb Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
At 19.5%.
Yeah, I think in certain tournaments he'll be over 20 for sure.
What about King douchebag Sergio Garcia?
A mere 3.5%.
I mean, one of my favorite strategies is teaming him up with Phil. I mean, you put Sergio, Phil, and Tiger together, and you just got, the all-A asshole group.
Throw Cooch in there too, right?
Only if it's being played in Mexico.
So this one surprised me a little bit. Henrik Stenson is up there at 17% ownership.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, the course sets up well for him in that you have to hit fairways, which he can do with his 3-wood. You don't need a lot of length. He's a great iron player. I mean, there's no question about that. The one question mark is around the greens with him. I could definitely see him in contention come Sunday. He's probably a guy that I'll play quite a bit at 76. Looking at it again, Poulter, your boy there, Chris, another one of your on-brand players. How you feeling about Pulse this week? He let you down at the PGA when you were so high on him.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be on Poulter. Furyk, these guys, I think certainly have the upside that I'm looking for, and I guess Poulter too. But I think he's just on too much of a downswing I'm not going to pull the trigger on him.
That's fair.
It looks like Patrick Reed, if he can make it to the greens, putts really well on POA.
That's the problem. His long-term ball striking numbers, strokes gained approach especially, are just putrid.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. It's terrible. Yeah. Like number 2 putting on POA, but in the hundreds on approach and off the tee, and bogeys avoided.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on that. And Sergio, to go back to him, he's missed 8 straight cuts in majors, I think it is. He's missed every cut since the Masters that he won. So it might be 9 now. But I am completely out on Sergio.
He looked terrible
honestly,
last week, too.
He should miss the cut. He should not only miss the cut, they should just tell him after like 3 holes, we just don't want you here anymore.
I don't think he wants to be there anymore. I mean, he's got the skill set to play well. How do you miss 9 straight cuts in majors? Just doesn't make sense. That's why you see him at 7,800, which I think some guys are going to look at and go, oh, what a value that is. But I think that's a sucker play for me.
All right, so let's move down in this lower 7,000 range. That brings podcast favorite Jim Furyk into play.
Yes, sir.
I kind of, what do you think of Billy Horschel? He seems to set up well for this course.
Yeah, I don't mind Billy Ho this week. I'm not sure if I'll play him or not, but looking at his long-term stats, he's usually pretty good around the greens too. He's not a guy that I hate, although I don't believe he putts great on POA. He's a Florida guy originally. Doesn't tend to play great on the West Coast. So, but you're right. I mean, as far as the stats go, he lines up pretty well. I can't fault you for playing him. I'm not sure with my condensed player pool this week that I will be, but I can't say he's a bad play. It's definitely not a bad guy to look at. Who are the high-owned guys in this lower 7K range?
Well, let's see here. Furyk's at 17%. Yeah,
I figured he'd be pretty high.
I'm telling you, man, when I'm looking at this course, like I'm looking at a guy like Furyk. I like him a lot. But I also seem to be liking a little bit of Mr. Fitzpatrick as well, friend of the show, of course.
It looks like everybody else is below 10%, with the next highest being Hatton at 9.6.
Yeah, I like Hatton a little bit at 72. One guy I've got my eye on quite a bit, down towards the bottom of the 7K range. I just think his game sets up really well for this course. He's played well consistently now for the better part of a year. But that's CT Pan. The guy hits a lot of fairways, a lot of greens. Pretty solid around the greens, too. I think he's a pretty solid bet to make the cut. So I like CT down there at 7,100. Don't mind Billy Horschel, who you mentioned, Mark. I really like Cameron Smith at 7,300. I think he's an absolute wizard around the greens. He's got one good finish here a few years back in the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, but I just feel like he's a guy who he's also an Australian kid, so he's good on coastal courses. Will play well if it gets windy. I won't have any issues with that. Like I said, he's great around the greens too. Iron game can be pretty dialed in when he gets it going. So I think he's a guy that I'm going to be locking into quite a few of my lineups at 7,300.
Lots of options for a stars and scrubs lineup in the 7,000 range, I think.
Yeah, and I'll be looking. I look at this guy in majors quite a bit. Haotong Li or Li Haotong, depending on how you want to go about addressing him as a Chinese player. He's at 7,200. He's definitely shown that he can flash some really good form in big events. He finished top 3 at the British a couple years ago. I think he's a guy that you have to consider pretty strongly at 7,200, whether his form's lining up well or not. He doesn't play a ton in the States, so a lot of his finishes are going to be European tour based, but he's a guy that I like in majors because most people don't know about him yet, but I think in the next couple of years they will, and this is a place he could definitely pop.
So I'm shocked here there's no mention of your man Luke List.
There is not, for a reason. Don't like Luke List this week at all. I don't think he's the kind of guy that's going to go out there and grind it out. Although he played well at the PGA, that course set up a lot better for him because it was a bomber's course. It's the kind of place where you had to hit it long. You're not going to survive there hitting long irons into every green. So set up.
You got a guy you also like here: Brendan Grace, Keith Mitchell, Daniel Berger. There's some interesting names at the bottom of the 7K.
There are, and I'm not sure if he's a friend of the pod or not, but I talk about Lucas Glover a lot. His ball striking stats make it really hard to ignore him. Just finished 16th at the PGA. Not a great start at the Memorial in his last start 2 weeks ago, but Lucas Glover's a guy that I just can't ignore there at the bottom of the 7K range, right at 7K even. I think I'd be willing to even play him in cash as a little bit of a salary saver. I think Glover is going to be, he's a former U.S. Open champ too, so he's shown he can do it in these types of venues. Give me a resurgent Lucas Glover putting with whatever funky ass looking putter he's got these days.
Any love for Keegan Bradley?
No, God, no. Eddie Pepperell is out of the field. Just a note for our several listeners. 7K, he's not playing this week, so please don't put him in your lineups.
I'm not sure that anybody could put him in the lineups. His name is highlighted. It's all over DraftKings. It's like if you put him in your lineup and you play him, it's your fault.
He's got to be the only player in the field with 5 E's in his name, though, for what that's worth.
And he's got
sounds
the
like
best
a perfect
Twitter
player
name,
for me.
I think of all of the professional golfers, by far one of the best Twitter follows in all of the PGA.
He's incredible. I've mentioned that before. He's just absolutely hilarious, man. I love that guy.
I think he's up there with Brandon McCarthy as two of the top overall follows when it comes to professional athletes. So Brandon McCarthy, if you don't know, was I don't know. I don't think he's pitching anymore, but he was a pitcher in the major leagues, and he's one of those guys that does respond to just random nobodies, and that's the best part of it. Is I think Pepperell had a bad finish not too long ago, and somebody talked some smack to him, and he's like, man, I know it's tough. He took it in stride.
All right, final thoughts on the 7K range. Anything else you want to bring up, Adam?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered it pretty well. The guys we haven't mentioned are mostly fades for me. I don't know. Maybe Jimmy Walker deserves a look, but it's about the extent of it for me in the 7K range.
All right, now we get into the tipsy pick range, 6,900 and below. We'll just cover the whole thing. Is there anybody you like down here? CH3, the Barn Rat.
Yeah, the guys that we know are going to be high owned are going to be EVR, Eric Van Rooyen, who I was on at the PGA, definitely paid dividends there, and then Danny Willett, who I've also been on for quite a while. It pains me, but I think because of ownership and because of, again, how volatile this week is and the fact that they're going to be high owned in the sub 7K range, both those guys to me are fades. I don't know what you're showing for ownership, but I'd be surprised if those weren't the two highest owned guys in the 6K range. Um,
The highest owned ones are Van Roon,
EVR, yep.